Well, then it'd be feet, but you can't make it toes. Because the toes aren't here yet. Yeah, they're partly here.
Didn't you just say that the iron and the clay represented the part outer space character and part human?
Yeah, but tonight I'm pointing out it means more than that, because it was iron in Rome and it wasn't outer space. All right, Daniel chapter 2, verse 46. Daniel 2:46. Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel, and commanded they should offer an oblation, sweet odors to him. And the Lord said, Daniel, tell that fellow get up. And Daniel said, Lord, let him lie there. He looks so pretty. And old Daniel had been prosecuted, you know, and persecuted and all this and that, and carried away from his home. And he was this little old Jewish boy in exile. And here's this mighty king down, flattening his face in the floorboards, worshiping. And Daniel just can't resist it. There's a sin in every man in the Bible. I don't care how good they are, something wrong somewhere. And Joseph gets by adultery, and when he gets by adultery, he lies about the silver cup. And David gets by one sin, winds up with adultery, and Simon Peter gets by adultery and lying, winds up cursing and swearing. And Noah gets by adultery and lying and cursing and swearing, winds up drunk. You can't win, man. And Daniel here, of all these men, you don't read about him doing anything wrong in the Bible except right here. And here this king is down here worshiping him, see? And he just stand there just letting him lie. And you know what happened? Look at the next chapter. Look at 3:1. You see how Daniel encouraged that by his action? See that thing? I mean, Daniel let Nebuchadnezzar worship him, so when Nebuchadnezzar put up the statue and Daniel said, no, don't do that. And Nebuchadnezzar said, well, what about that time I bowed down to you? You didn't say anything. Got him, boy. And about the time Nebuchadnezzar fell down in front of Daniel, you know, the Lord said, Daniel, you better tell him to get up. Daniel said, well, let's let him lie there for a little while, you know, kind of humble him. He's been such a big shot. And the Lord said, boy, you better get him up. There'll be some lions up there for you later. And a little later, old Daniel goes in the lions den. All right, 2:46. He fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel, and commanded they should offer an oblation. That's a sacrifice, man. That's a sacrifice, an oblation, and sweet odors unto him. Now, that's not the way to handle people when they bow down and worship you. That isn't the way to do it. Don't let them bring the sweet oblation and all this and that. When they tried that on Paul ran in among the crowd and says, sirs, why do you do these things? We also are men of like passions with you, and preach you should turn from these vanities of the living God. He wouldn't let them worship him. All right, Daniel chapter 2, verse 46. And sweet odors unto him. The king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods, and a Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldst reveal this secret. Then the king made Daniel a great man, and gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and the chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. Then Daniel requested of the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel sat in the gate of the king. Which implies that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are out, not in the capital, they're out around the country, and Daniel's in the capital, right by the king's throne. Now, Clarence Larkin says 23 years passed between Daniel 2 and Daniel 3, and I don't know where he gets that from, but I know Nebuchadnezzar had a reign that extended from a certain time to a certain time, and Belshazzar gets kicked off there in 536 when Persia comes in. And Nebuchadnezzar himself reigns for something like 25 years before Belshazzar comes on. And I'm inclined to accept Larkin's opinion because of the phenomena here. How can you explain Nebuchadnezzar putting up this image to bow down to worship it, when in the previous chapter, chapter 2, verse 47, he confessed, your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets. Pretty quick defection, you know, if it just happened the night before. So there's probably an interval of time in here. All right, 3:1. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits. And he says the breadth of it was 6 cubits. And then he doesn't give the width. Now, the only article that has 2 measurements to it is a cylinder. That thing there is, say, 2 feet of ½ inch there. It's got 2 measurements. That is, the breadth is the same as the width. Now, if you're going to get any other kind of measure, you say, I want 6 feet of 2 before. So you gave 3 measures. I want 24 feet of 1 before. I want 30 feet of 1 by 6. So you gave 3 measures. I want 30 feet of 1 by 6. I want 20 feet of 2 before. But when you say I want 10 feet a quarter inch round, see, you say I want 10 feet of quarter inch, and that's all you gave. Which means whatever this image was, it was a cylinder. It was circular. And he says this image was 60 cubits, around 90 feet, 6 cubits, 9 feet. So the image you have is a pillar, like that. Although undoubtedly shaped like this. And in Washington, shaped like that. 2. Then Nebuchadnezzar, the king, sent to gather together the princes, governors, captains, judges, treasurers, counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image, which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Now 6 times it says set up. Notice at verse 2, at the end of the verse, had set up. Near the end of verse 3, had set up. Right at the end of the verse 3, had set up. At the end of verse 5, hath set up. Chapter 7, verse 7, had set up. Is that 6 times? Is that 6? Well, there's one more time somewhere there. Verse 12, there it is. The end of verse 12. Had set up. Had set up. Oh, I notice another 6 in the passage. Which I have set up. Which I have set up. I was just looking for had set up. Past tense. Oh, you make it 7 with all of them. But had set up is 6. Had set up, hath set up, had set up. Thou hast set up, it's 6 hads. All right, now notice 6 instruments in verse 15. Cornet 1, flute 2, harp 3, sackbut 4, psaltery 5, dulcimer 6, and all kinds of music. But 6 instruments named. So he says 6 times he had set it up, and 6 instruments of music are named, and the pillar is 60 by 6 by 6. And boy, if that isn't a plain warning what you're dealing with, you never saw it. Because in the tribulation, turn to Revelation 13, in the tribulation, the Antichrist sets up an image. Revelation 13, verse 14. And deceives them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, they should make an image to the beast. And notice the kingdom that's in power at this time when the image is set up. Revelation 17, verse 5. Revelation 17, verse 5. Revelation 17, 5. Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar is one of the best types of Antichrist in the Bible. And the tribulation, he sets up an image. 666. And they fall down and worship the image. And Nebuchadnezzar says to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, if you don't worship the image, you go in the fiery furnace. And in Revelation 13, if they don't worship the image, they get the heads cut off. So Nebuchadnezzar is very clearly, in this passage at least, a type of the Antichrist. All right, Daniel chapter 3, verse 3. Then the princes, governors, captains, judges, treasurers, counselors, sheriffs, ecumenical movement, all in perfect accord. All the rulers of the provinces were gathered together to the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. The representative of the government, see. And of course with them will be Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because in chapter 249 it said Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were over the affairs of the province. And here it says in 3, all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together. Verse 4, then a herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, shall the same hour be cast in the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Now, the first thing about the passage is, notice that Nebuchadnezzar realizes the only way you can get everybody get together and get everybody to get together in one group is on a religious basis. You have to have a one world religion to get them all together. There's no such thing as everybody living in peace until you have one religion that agrees with all of them. Atheism will not agree with all of them. Every man's got to have a God. If he doesn't have a God, he'll make a God. And this means that in the end, when you get over here, communism is not going to win out. Now, communism may win out, and I don't want to be misunderstood, communism may win out as a way of life, or it may win out as a form of government, or it may win out as a form of economy, but it will not win out as top ruler. The top ruler will be a God. Men have to have gods. And the devil is a god, 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Now, I know how it is. I read all this stuff and get all this stuff. I've got books at home by Kenneth Goff, you know, and I was an agent, and I was a Stalin agent, and I was a secret spy, and I've got confessions of a counter spy, and I've got Petrovsky, Vaskoplovsky, whatever his name was, that Russian that defected, you know, and told all he knew. And by the time you get reading through that stuff and hear no Perkel preach on the horseman wearing you know, and all that, you get to think that there's nothing but communism around. That's the only danger is. That's the only thing you better look out for. But you're getting too far from the Bible. See? Now, the reason why it's dangerous to get too much that way is because the Bible doesn't have a whole lot to say about that. Now, the Bible says some things about it. But if there's anything this Bible makes clear, it makes clear when Christ comes again, there's a God on this earth being worshipped. And that isn't communism. That's something else. Yes.
Would communism be a religion, though?
It is now. It is now. It'll have to give way to Rome before the thing gets over. It'll have to give way.
Well, say like with Lenin, he was in the head dog there. He was kind of like a dictator, even though he, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, communism, modern communism is fascism when you get right down to it. I mean, everybody's reduced to a Mongol race, and 8 or 9 people control 50 people that run them. Yes.
You got anything on statement that Russia's supposed to make? They said they would rule the Eastern world in 1975.
Yeah, but last time I heard it was supposed to be 72. And then somebody moved it up to 73, and then somebody moved to 75. And if I was going to fix a date, I wouldn't make it any of those anyway. I'd make it 76. Yeah, because the 76 of 13, and that's rebellion, and we rebelled in 76. And if a person wants to make our country a communist country, the ideal setup would be wait till the 4th of July of 1776, and then have a revolution to prove we were doing what our forefathers did, and therefore we were the real patriots. That'd be what to do, and they're getting conditioned for that now. But Rome will win out. Rome has a way of always coming out on the winning side. And you watch old Rome work, and they never come out on the losing side of a war. They haven't yet. Now, World War II, Russia came out, as far as their fighting goes, as an atheistic, communistic nation. That's the side the Catholic Church came out on. They didn't go down with Germany. They survived with Russia and the United States. You don't ever miss. All right, Daniel chapter 2, verse 14. Then Daniel answered, oh, that isn't it. I got the wrong page. 3:8. Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. And that's the way it's always going to be. And the tribulation, this thing going to go on this way. The Antichrist going to have that covenant with the Jew. In the middle, put up the image. They won't bow down. Kill them. Came near to accuse the Jew. You read in Revelation when the devil was cast down. The accuser of our brethren is cast down, which did accuse them before God day and night. They accuse the Jew. Now the next thing about this thing, notice in verse 7 that Nebuchadnezzar is also smart in that he knows that not only is religion the only way to get them together, but you've got to have a dance band. So at the halfway house you'll find both of them probably. And the way to get that thing going is get the beat going. Music is a universal language. Therefore, if you want to get a universal church with a universal religion and get everybody together, you've got to have music. And people understand music that don't understand English. People understand music that can't read Spanish. For example, I had a Spaniard here, and a Frenchman here, and a German here, and a Chinese here, and a Russian here, and an Italian here, and an Eskimo here, and an Indian here, and a Japanese here, and a Mexican here, and something else over here. And none of them could speak either of the language. I could turn the record player, and if that thing was going There wouldn't be one person in that room would think that was a call to a prayer meeting. That's right. And I could put on a record there, and I get that thing going, that thing go, dum da 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 pum da 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 pum da pum dum da da da. They'd know that was killing music, and you wouldn't have to know the guy's language to know it. I took a hillbilly over to my house one time, years ago, and he was talking about that music I had. He said, "I don't understand that long hair music." And I said, "Well, you got to get educated to it. You listen to it, you get to like it." He said, "I can't understand." I said, "Sure, you can understand it." And I put a record on for him, and I said, "Now I want you to listen to that thing, and I want you to tell me what you think of when you hear that thing." I put on this thing, and there were violins playing in the background, and there were two French horns that came in there in a duet. And they played this thing. That old hillbilly listened to that thing. He didn't have an 8th grade education. He listened to that thing, and he said, "Well," he said, "sounds to me," he said, "like it sounded to me like a fellow way out in the woods someplace, all by himself, out in the woods someplace." Well, I was playing in the overture to the Freischütz by Weber, and it's about 100 out in the woods. See? Why, he didn't know Weber from clever, brother, and he didn't know Freischütz from baloney. See, he didn't know what it was, and he wouldn't know a violin from a Chinese guitar, probably, and he wouldn't know a French horn from an automobile horn. But he heard that thing, and those violins were going, and over those French horns were going, that little boy says, "Sound like somebody out in the woods." That's where they were, out in the woods. And so when you have music, you have a universal language. And that's why this whole rock, Jesus, Berkeley freak movement has to have the hot guitar and the acid rock and the tweeters and the woofers and the electric amplifiers. Because the music they play is African jungle sex music. And that's the kind of a movement it is. Somebody said some of them getting saved. Praise the Lord. Somebody said that they really are getting saved. Good, I'm glad of it. And I mean it. And I mean it. And more power to them. But don't follow them. See? Yes.
He's over here in South Right. I went over to see him yesterday. He's not good enough to get his numbers to win. So I spent $150 on his electronic computer. It'll beat out anything you want to beat out.
Oh, good night.
No door rules. It's costing I heard.
The electronic computer playing drums for him? You know, when I first was saved, I had a $300 set of Slingerland drums, and they're worth about $600 now. And I left them in a warehouse in Addison, Alabama. And right after I got saved, I kept thinking, what to do with those drums? What to do with those drums? And somebody told me, well, use them for the Lord. And I said, well, how can you use a drum for the Lord? You know, I just couldn't imagine it, you know, playing rumbas and congas and tangos and sambas and boogie and all that stuff with it. And they said, well, I'll show you. So they took me down to Assembly of God Church in Greenville, South Carolina. And I got down there, and here was that rhythm section up there in that band. I was going to say bandstand. It was a pulpit. If you played up there for years, you just called a bandstand, you know. And he got up there on the pulpit, and they had the music service. And I'm telling you, I heard one number, and I made up my mind that set of Slingerland drums was going to stay in that warehouse till hell froze over. And they played You Wash in the Blood. And I'm telling you, I have never jammed at 2 in the morning any more torn up than that thing was. That guy kicked that thing up, that thing da 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 da. Good night, man. That guy back on like that, and I left him in the warehouse. Yeah.
The only musical instrument that can be electronically produced. That's because they're the only ones that are really regular. It's got a steady beat and a steady tone.
Yeah.
No other instrument has that.
So what do you mean electronically reproduced? You can tell you.
Now that isn't what I mean. That thing what the lake was talking about actually produces the tone and can be varied for pitch and frequency or beats. That's the word.
Well, can't you make a recording of another
Oh, you can record any instrument.
Yeah.
But this is not a recording. This is a producing the same beat that a drum would produce, but you're producing it electronically.
Oh.
And you can't shoot any other music like that. You've got to program it into it.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. It's one of the few instruments you can't make sound spiritual. You can't make a drum sound spiritual. Now, it's hard to make a guitar sound spiritual. You can do it, but it's hard. I'll tell you what's hard to make sound spiritual, the saxophone. Now, I've all kind of saxophone player, but there's something just about that. You know, it just don't sound, like passed out tracks. Now, you can take a trumpet or a piano or an organ or a harp, and no trouble at all. No trouble at all. But boy, that guitar and that saxophone, man, they're rough. And that drum is hopeless. Hopeless. Ma'am? Yeah, that's right. If you played just military beats with it, you get by with it. But even then, it isn't quite as much spiritual as it is military. Yeah. Yeah, but it's a drum. We're supposed to have one of those Salvation Army guys went into a hot lick on that drum during a... I saw a cartoon one time with Salvation Army stand in the corner and the bass drum was over this guy's head, and the guy's walking off in disgust, and the bass drum would throw this guy's head clear down to his waist, and he said, well, you can't win them all, All right, Daniel chapter 3, verse 8. Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, so like a trumpet, flute, the instrument, harp, the instrument, sackbut, so different kind of a harp, and you look it up in a dictionary. Psaltery, a small harp. Dulcimer, they vary. Some say another kind of harp, some say a bell, like a chime. And there's disagreement among them as to what it is, but it's a band. And the old Scotch preacher that read this thing over the third time he read it, or fourth time down in verse 15, he just said, same band. Didn't read all the instruments. I shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. So they sing at what time there was 3 children in the land of Israel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They all went down the land of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And he told everybody to hear the sound of the cornet. And he told everybody to hear the sound of the drum. Oh, you must bow down and worship the idol. And when they get this thing going, this worldwide religion, they're going to get Telstar going with it, and they get the dance band playing with it. And the time for worship come, you'll go over to your house and turn on your church and sit there and watch that thing come in there, and maybe in 3 dimensions. And they get that band going, that old electronic radar computer, $300,000 million XYZ beam, whatever, pick up every set that turns on, and check everybody who turns it on, checks everybody who bends over and kisses just the right time, and then know whether you got the mark or not. Yeah.
Almond Beach, they had a Southern Baptist band, and they toured the country, and we was watching. We went out there, and we was going to the beach, and they were there, so we watched them for a while. And back in the background, everybody stand back in the background. When they start that beat, you see them gals start driving, and guys started moving. They're getting ready to dance.
Well, it's dance music.
That's right. And you just see it.
Anybody that has danced can hear one of those things and know right away what it is. I had a meeting one time up in the last one I ever had, up in a big youth camp up north in Ohio. And after that, we split the camps. I've been going to different camps since, but I went to that camp every year for years. And last year I was there. They all invited us in the field house after a service. And here just been up there preaching, about hell and judgment and getting saved and everything else. And then after that, in came this band. And I mean, boy, all the girls, peroxide hair and, dressed up in a bunch of dresses as tight as a scuba diver suit and that kind of thing, and all this. wild blue and green paint, you know, and these guys, the hair down to here in these aluminum suits, you know. And, boy, I'm telling you, man, got up there and a saxophone, clarinet, got the works, boy, got the thing going. And I had to sit through it, you know. I was speaker, I sat through it, but boy, I'm telling you, talk about some looks, man, some people checking me out, you know, look over me, so I'm taking it, you know. And I could hear those kids, some of those kids around there talking in the group sitting, promise of you, can I have this next dance with you? You know, they're saying to each other, kidding, you know. So let's dance. You have the next dance, may I cut, you know. They're sitting, but they're saying, may I cut, you know. Cut them. They know what it is. They know what it is. The preachers are kidding themselves. The kids know exactly what it is. Yes. That what? I haven't heard it. I don't believe. All I've noticed, the fundamental churches with the old-fashioned songs, they've all slowed down, and they've all gotten sweet. It's I have found a friend in Jesus. He's everything to me. He's the fairest of 10,000, you know. That's a quartet number, man. See, that singing, it should be four men singing, I have found a friend in Jesus. He's everything to me. That's what it is, see? It isn't, I have found a friend. That's right. They all do that, man. You can get that all day long, any day. Where were you this morning? Okay. Go ahead. Made a what? Yeah. Yeah, lower and quieter and softer. It's a kind of Christianity where it's just kind of, you know. Daniel 3, verse 11. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast in the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Gold's it. Then Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar says, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not give money to the United Drive, nor support the cooperative program which I have set up? Now, if you better, what time you hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, the psaltery, dulcimer, all kinds of music, to send your contribution to Nashville? Well, but if not, that's what it is. That's what it is. Somebody's always setting up something, see, and saying, bow down or get it, see. And the old song says they wouldn't bend, they wouldn't bow, they wouldn't burn. Yeah.
Yeah, the other day at work, we come in the morning and they set up a projector, and they had this story about this little deaf girl that's getting funds from the United Fund.
Yeah.
And it was this hillbilly, this lady hillbilly singer, Loretta Lynn or something like that.
Yeah.
And she was singing about this girl down the United Way, doing the United Way, and it built up, and at the end, the guy gives you this little speech, you know, and he's saying, if you don't do it, it won't get done. And then the guy says, we left our card, our pledge, you know, they're in the movie, it says we're going to hand out pledge cards,
Yeah.
And you sign how much you give your fair share, and all that kind of stuff. And so at the end of the day, he gets up there and the guy gives this little speech, and he reaches around and says, oh, I left my fair share cards and things.
Thing to do is take your check and earmark it to that little girl. Say, please just send money to her. See how that goes over. Yeah. Well, that's a good question. The Bible says in 2:49 he sat in the gate of the king, so he must have been present when this thing came up. Now, we can say he was busy in affairs of the state and wasn't there, and yet still it looked like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were out over the kingdom and he was at home. And I thought about that and prayed about it, and all I can think of, which is probably pretty wild, But all I can think of is that when that time came, that he stood back and let them stand their own feet, because up till that time he'd been doing all the work. I mean, look in Daniel chapter 1, in verse 8, he's the one that decides not to take the food. See that? He's the one that talks to the eunuch, Daniel chapter 1, verse 11. And then it's Daniel that talks to the guard, chapter 2, verse 11. Then it's Daniel that goes into the king, chapter 2, verse 16. And then it's Daniel that explains the dream, Daniel chapter 2, verse 27. And it looked like it's every tub shall stand its own bottom. It looked like Daniel now is standing back and letting them go on their own faith. Yes.
Wouldn't it God use that ruler of the whole problem?
Sir?
And wouldn't it call 248 where it says he's ruler of the whole problem? Maybe he was just excluded from having a vow.
Yeah, maybe. He could have been out over some other kind of work, not been there. But it's hard to see how he couldn't have known about it. The thing went out all over the whole kingdom. Daniel's supposed to be a type of the false prophet? No.
He's number 2, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He gets beat the false prophet in the tribulation.
Yeah, but that won't work, because the false prophet in the tribulation commands people to bow down and worship the image. And Daniel's not going to do that. Yes.
How did Daniel manage to just sit back and let them take it that time, if he was there, without bowing down to the thing itself?
He'd been standing right by the king. The king wouldn't have bowed. They go everybody bow down. Here's Daniel here and the king here and Mrs. Nebuchadnezzar over here, and they just stand and watch. All right, 13. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said to them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods and worship the gold image which I have set up? Now if you be ready that at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, flute, same band, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the image which I have made, well. See? In the sense of okay, all right. And the Southerners still use it that way. They use it for yes. And when Adonijah asked Bathsheba about going to the king, she says, well, meaning I will, see, yes. But up north, it's well as a interjection. You're saying well, trying to make up your mind what you're going to say, see. But down south out in the country, they still use well for yes. And I learned that because I came down here and didn't know the idiom, you know. And I got preaching in a colored church one night up in Carolina. And I was all through the meeting, this guy down front kept saying, well. And I kept waiting for him to say what he's going to say, you know. And he'd say, well, and then there's another colored fellow on the other side who would say, look out. And I thought this guy here was trying to say something, and this guy was interrupting him, see? It was the wildest, man. I get preached away and say, you go to hell, you know, this guy said, well, look out. That was the whole message. But I finally learned, you know, they're just getting you going, and they'll get you going. Boy, you don't preach anywhere unless you preach in nigger church. Boy, they get there and said, that's the right, white man. Tell him, white man. That's the right, that's the true white man, you know. They'll preach you to death. All right, Daniel chapter 3, verse 15. But if you worship not, you shall be cast in the same hour in the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hand? Well, he knew back in chapter 2. Back in chapter 2, he said in verse 47, your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings. Now, the thing that you have to remember, which Larkin points out, and he's probably got it right, is that when old Nebuchadnezzar comes in and gets Daniel, it's 606 B.C., and 23 years later, he's captured Jerusalem and burnt to the ground, taking all the stuff out of the temple. In the meantime, so when he says, who is the God that shall deliver you out of my hands, Nebuchadnezzar figures this way, I went over there and destroyed Jerusalem and burned the temple and stole the gold and silver, and their God didn't do anything to me. See? So he's figuring, how can a God like that deliver you if he can't even deliver his own temple? All right, verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O King Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. We are not careful. A beautiful illustration of Philippians 4:6. Be careful for nothing. And since the New Bible has changed the word careful to anxious, then you've lost the cross reference to Daniel. And the moral of that is, I don't care if it's so plain, the little Abner can read it. If it breaks up your system of cross references, it's stealing the truth from you. And Paul says in Philippians 4:6, be careful for nothing. And after all, the Old English is better anyway. It's better than anxious. I mean, look at this. Be careful for nothing. We are not full of care. That's what the word means. I don't know why folks say it's archaic. They have trouble with it. If you're careful, you're full of care. You're worried about the thing. You're concerned about it. Full. That's what the word means. And Paul says, be careful for nothing. Don't be over anxious and worried about anything. And he says again, he says here, we're not careful to answer thee. All right, verse 16. We are not careful to answer thee in this matter. Amazing thing. They're not modern day Christians at all. They're kind of like Simon Peter. Simon Peter came to the house one day and he said, they want some tax money from you out there. And Jesus said, Simon, let me ask you something. Whom do the kings of the earth take tribute, their own children or strangers? Peter says, strangers. Now you see how dogmatic that is and how reckless that is? There's no thought behind that at all. Children of strangers, strangers. They said, we're not careful to answer. Boy, if you ever ought to be careful to answer a man in a matter, shouldn't you be careful to answer a monarch who's about to burn you in a furnace? And those fellows step up there and say, you want to know what we're going to do? Okay, we'll tell you. And they had it already arranged ahead of time what they're going to tell him. Christ said, take no thought what you're going to say. When you stand before him, it'll be giving you what to say. So you don't be careful of it. You just step in and wham, see, and lay it down. But that isn't this generation of Christians. This generation of Christians. Now, can't you just see that thing? Suppose Simon Peter came in the door there and those old Pharisees had been with him. And the Lord said, to whom do the kings of earth take tribute? Pete, their own children or strangers? And Pete started to say something, and the Pharisees said, now wait a minute. If you say strangers, he'll say this. And if you say children, he'll say this. Pete says strangers. And the Pharisees said, wait a minute, that's a little bit hasty now. That's a little bit prejudiced. There are some people that think children. Don't you have any respect for other people's beliefs? Strangers. So, but do you see how dogmatic, and now how can we get along if we don't respect each other's belief? Strangers. See it comes through there. In other words, when the man knows where he is and knows what he's doing, you don't have to mess around with anything. And those fellows came in there, and Nebuchadnezzar said, I'm going to give you one more chance to buy that image. They said, listen, Your Majesty, we settled this business before we came in here, and we're on our way to the furnace. Don't get in our way. Now, that's it. That's the equivalent of it, see? That's what it is. And the Christian who's sure of his footing and knows where he's at, and is rooted and grounded in that word and doing the best he can, never has to mess around with a thing like that. You don't have to worry about what you're going to do, You don't have to plan and figure. Now, what can I say to get the most out of this church? How can I figure to have the most effect on the most people? What can I say to get the best income? And how can I influence so-and-so so he'll vote my way? And how can I contact so-and-so and so-and-so so they'll support my... You don't have to do it, see? And if you're on the side of the truth, just put it out. There it is. Then leave it. You said to get me in trouble. It got them in a furnace. And it got John the Baptist's head in the chopping block, and it got Paul in the chopping block, and it got Jesus on the cross, and it got Savonarola burned at the stake. But that's the way it is. Now, there may be some matters you have to pray over and give some time to, but this isn't one of them. It's a matter of whether or not you've got to bow down to an image or go to the furnace, while you just get your asbestos suit and go. All right, Daniel 3:17. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us. So the song says he's able to deliver thee. In other words, if God didn't want them to burn, they couldn't burn. If God doesn't want your head in the block, it won't get on the block. If God doesn't want you to starve, you're not going to starve. So quit being careful about it, see, and worrying about it. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. And he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. Boy, don't you know that burned him up. He got burned worse than they did. And he said, our God is able to get us out there and he can deliver us from you. 18, but if not. Notice how Christ testifies a good testimony before Pontius Pilate, just like that, see? You could have no power at all except for giving you from him that is above, see? Christ said, I can get away from you. You get me, it's only because you got it from up there. All right, 17, O king, but if not, be it known unto thee, O king. We'll have to close here for tonight. Time's getting away. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not, negative, we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Well, I'd like to go on, but there's too much in here. And I bought the New Schofield Bible with it. I want to read you some passages on what you're about ready to read, but it'd take another 20 minutes. So we'll stop tonight in verse 18. Now the context, they've been asked to fall down and worship the golden image, and they've refused. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego have said, but if not, be it known to thee, O king, we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage, the countenance, the face, expression, the form of his visage, the shape of the face. And it's a very vivid Old English expression, which is good because when a man shows expression, the face, the forms change. And see that thing there? This goes here, and this goes there, and that goes there, and that goes there, and this goes here. And see, it's the visage, the form of the visage is changed. And against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. Old English, for used to be, ordinarily, where it was ordinarily heated. Like he says in Acts, they went down the river where prayer was wont to be made, where it was usually done. More than it was wont to be heated, and raise up this blast furnace 7 times as hot as it ordinarily was. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Now it's a picture of several things. Historically, the thing really happened, just like you read it right there. Historically, it really happened. All right. Spiritually, it's true of the Christian. Beloved, not think it strange concerning the fiery trial, which is a try you as though some strange thing happened to you, but rejoice in as much you're partakers of Christ's suffering, and when his glory may be revealed, you may be glad of exceeding joy. So spiritually, it's true of the Christian in the trials he goes through, a fiery trial. All right. Doctrinally, it's especially true of the Jewish nation. They're the bush that's burned and not consumed.